Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes made another transfer portal splash, this time at corner.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Bohr, but today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you guys for making me your first listen of the day. And thank you for those who served, as it is Memorial Day. And I want to make sure we all give props to those who have fought for our country, of course. So let's talk about the Colorado Buffaloes' latest transfer portal addition. His name is Tyreekus Davis. He's joining from Wyoming, defensive back. He's been all over, right? And he's got a ton of experience. He's a guy who benefited from what I'm calling the Diego Pavia rule. He started his career at Navarro Community College, actually played 3 seasons there before going to Wyoming as a junior college transfer. And in 19 games with the Cowboys, he had 60 total tackles, 2 picks, 14 pass breakups, and 2 fumble recoveries and or involvements, if you will. According to PFF, he had a 70.4, I believe grade it was, 70.8 defensive grade, 69.9 coverage grade. And not bad, right? He brings depth. He brings experience. He gets an opportunity to play 1 more year. He gets an opportunity to learn from Deion Sanders, and he gets an opportunity to play at the power 4 level. Whereas Colorado, they get another guy who adds depth to a cornerback room that is losing Travis Hunter, losing Colton Hood. So there's a lot of talent going out. And although they have DJ McKinney and Preston Hodge, you still need guys around them, right? And I think that's what the move here is. It's like, hey, can never have enough depth. And he's going to have a lot of competition in this room. He's now the 7th defensive back that they've brought in. They brought in, and he's the, I think, 3rd corner, right? They brought in Tion Parks, Terrence Love, John Slaughter, Taufik Bayard, Makari Vickers, and Noah King. Vickers and King and Parks are all corners. So it's going to be a pretty tight competition for that 3rd and 4th corner spot, because obviously when you lose Travis Hunter, one, he's the best corner in college football, regardless of what the Thorpe Award decided. You're losing a playmaker. When you lose Colton Hood, you're losing someone who you thought would be your next Travis Hunter, a.k.a. your next number 1 corner, I guess you could say. And so when you get a guy who, like Davis, has a lot of experience, probably doesn't need to be a clear-cut number 1 corner for the Buffs this year, he comes in, provides depth. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think he's a little bit undersized. I'm seeing him listed anywhere from 5'9" to 5'10". I believe he's at like 160-ish pounds is what I keep seeing on him, or excuse me, 188 pounds. 180 pounds is what I was trying to say. But Colorado got him over. He was lightly recruited in the portal. I'm wondering if it was more so a portal issue in the sense of like people weren't interested because they didn't know about his eligibility situation. But East Carolina, Middle Tennessee, New Mexico, and Old Dominion were after him. And then Colorado comes into the picture, offers him, takes a visit to Boulder earlier this month, and he announced on Sunday, hey, I'm going to come to Boulder. I'm going to play for Deion Sanders and the Buffs. And so, again, I like the idea of having depth. Injuries you never account for injuries. That's always an issue. And you always need guys on all sides of the ball. And a guy like Davis here is someone that Colorado has been missing at corner, right? They need another guy who could just step in, play a role when they need him to. Otherwise, I mean, you've been lacking corner depth, and now you lose Travis Hunter and Colton Hood. So you take a flyer on a guy who got the Diego Pavia benefit of the doubt when it comes to eligibility, and with Deion Sanders and Robert Livingston helping him in his development, I would assume things are going to go pretty well for this young man in Boulder, because at the end of the day, he could either be a starter or he could be a key rotational piece in that corner. You need a lot of those. Injuries happen. Guys lose confidence. Coaches lose confidence in guys. And Colorado has a complicated scheme that Robert Livingston is putting together. So if he is able to pick that up and figure out a role, whether it's on special teams or defense, the Colorado Buffaloes may have just found a hidden gem in the transfer portal. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Colorado's transfer portal quarterback, what he brings to the table, Kaden Salter, because I think he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. And we're going to talk to our transfer portal insider. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building some wealth. They have surprising insights. I learned how much I was spending on food delivery, right? You get a little lazy. You don't want to hop in the kitchen. You don't want to fire up the rice cooker. And all of a sudden you're ordering a few $100 in DoorDash or whatever it may be. So Monarch Money helped me figure out, like, hey, maybe I should go fire up the rice cooker a little bit more. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Joining me today, Brian Smith. He hosts not Locked on College Football. I was just with Spencer, so he's fresh in my head. Locked on Transfer Portal and Locked on Seminoles. Brian, I wanted to bring you on because I've been doing this series where I dive into every single one of Colorado's transfers, what they bring to the table, sort of why fans should be excited. And I think this is the biggest portal addition, I won't say of the Deion Sanders era, because obviously he had his son and Travis Hunter, but it feels important because this is very much the focal point of the Deion Sanders era, post Travis Hunter, post Shedeur Sanders, and that's Kaden Salter, the Liberty transfer quarterback, who he had a lot of programs after him, and the Buffs were the ones that got him. When you saw Kaden Salter transfer to Colorado, what were your initial thoughts, and then what do you think he brings to the table in general?
Number one, I was excited because I thought there might be a lull for a season for Colorado, because you can't go from an NFL quarterback to just some random kid that's a redshirt freshman transferring in and expecting things to go well. Secondarily, for what Kaden brings, he's dynamic. He will run, he will extend plays, he has the arm to throw a deep out, and he has the ability to get the ball down the field. Just looking at his stats, he had a better year the year before, but he lost a bunch of players. But, I mean, he's thrown almost 50 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, and he's a threat with his legs as well. And he doesn't throw the ball into harm's way. He has just 12 picks over the last couple of seasons. So I don't think they're going to lose a ton at quarterback in terms of total production. I'm not saying he's better. It's just that he does it in a different way. Like, his legs will get him to the outside and cause a lot of problems. And again, it'll extend the play where, I mean, Shedeur was a decent athlete, but he's not on the same level as what Salter is. So it's a different kind of offense for Colorado. They've got some talented players in the backfield, but they're not super deep. So he might be utilized, especially in the red zone. And I'm cool with that, because they need somebody that's going to be able to make some plays and going to be able to kind of take over a game in special situations. By the way, the Big 12 this next season will be the most experienced quarterback group in the country. So if you're not good at quarterback, it won't go well. Like, 2/3 of the league has their guy back, and there's a few transfers like Salter into. It's going to be dominant. You need a quarterback that shows up every week. So Deion hit a home run there because, like you said, properly so, he could have chosen a lot of other schools. And good for Salter for making his own way. That is kind of an exciting thing. Like, just from an aesthetic standpoint, him going up against like Avery Johnson at Kansas State and all these different matchups. TCU's got a really good quarterback. Baylor's got a really good quarterback. Arizona State, there's a half dozen guys who are going to play in the NFL out of the Big 12. Salter might be one of those guys too. He just does it a little bit differently than some of the others.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions I have, and you kind of touched on a little earlier, was his decline in performance this past year, right? So 2023, he was Conference USA MVP. Liberty was kind of pushing for a playoff spot, we'll call it. They ended up getting blasted in I think it was a Fiesta Bowl against Oregon. But before that, 61% completion percentage, 2,800 yards passing, 32 touchdowns to 6 picks. And then he also ran for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. This past year, a dip in production, 1,800 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks. And then he also ran for 587 yards and 7 touchdowns. So what do you make of the decline in his numbers? I think they lost a game because there was a natural disaster over there. I think it was App State, if I'm not mistaken, that they couldn't play because there was the
whole situation with the Carolinas.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think that took a game away from him. But what do you make of his struggles this past year and why he wasn't able to stay at the MVP level?
They lost some kids just from graduation, and a ton of kids transferred out.
Okay.
Look, the end of the day, I don't care if you've got Vince Lombardi in his prime on the sidelines. It's about the Jimmies and the Joes more than the X's and the O's. He didn't have the same guys to throw the football to. Mm-hmm. So teams stacked the box and said, go ahead. It's just, it is what it is. It's kind of like Colorado pre-Deion. It was just, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
Those
were there.
bad football teams. I could not watch that football. Yeah. They didn't make it on TV very much because of that. And Kaden still made them viable, but he couldn't hit the deep shots and the sexy plays in the passing game because he didn't have the options.
Okay.
So I look at the 23 season as a better barometer, and you're going to get a guy with a chip on his shoulder because what you just said, well, other people are going to pick that apart too. Well, look what he did last year. Why are they excited? Yeah. Hey, dummy, did you go look at what he did the year before and who he had? Right. So a lot of guys don't dig deep enough. And if you watch the film, I challenge anybody, go watch his film from his junior season, find it on YouTube, whatever. He has the arm that you're looking for. They're going to strike. They got some guys at Colorado that can run. I know they lost Travis. I get it. It. You can't replace somebody that's an all-time great. But they're going to spread it around. They got a speedy running back. It'll be a fun offense.
Salter, I think he has a better arm than people give him credit for. He could throw about 70, 75 yards. But his legs are going to be a huge factor. And I don't want to just limit him to being like a dual threat quarterback where his legs make his game. But I'm just basing it off of Colorado's offensive line, Brian. They haven't been great. 94 sacks on Shedeur Sanders in the past 2 years. They've brought in 17 offensive line transfers in the past 2 classes. They brought in 8 this year. The line has been a big issue. And I think Salter's legs, I don't think that was a mistake by Colorado, right? I think they wanted to bring in a quarterback who brings a different dynamic. Can you talk about how he could help mask the potential flaws at offensive line and how he opens up a playbook?
There are 2 things there. Number one is just avoiding the defenders coming at him. Like I used to say this all the time. Be careful blitzing the mobile quarterback, especially one with some experience, some savvy, some moxie, because he'll make some reads and throw the ball. But secondarily, if you break down and try to tackle him and it's not just right, and he gets outside the pocket, you can insert, like Jake Daniels is like the ultimate. Are you kidding? He's doing it at the NFL level too. But like, that's what he can do. And then instead of 2nd and 16, it's 2nd and 1 because he scrambles to the sideline and it's just a gut punch. And it's like you did everything right except for actually tackle the quarterback. Yeah. It's very unnerving for defensive coordinators. You hear them talk about it all the time. The other thing about it, like, I guess it's just an aside, when he escapes, as you brought up, like arm strength and everything, he might like roll right and it may look ugly, but his arm is so strong, he'll throw a corner route 40 yards down the field and hit the guy. And you're like, are you serious? He's going to have different kinds of playmakers with the buffs. And he might also just throw a check down to, like, I'm not going to pick one guy, but like from the running backs to the slots to the outside guys, they got a lot of make you miss receivers and right. You have to make sure you keep Salter in the pocket. If he beats you, it has to be reading, first read, second read. If he gets outside in the pocket and beats you consistently, I mean, he's going to get 1 or 2. But if he does that, that's on you. No. Teams do not tackle. I'm telling you, it's going to be a lot of YouTube highlights. It's going to be a lot of X and Instagram, like, oh, here he's at it again. He makes a guy miss, jukes a defensive lineman, gets it out, and they get a 40-yard touchdown. He's going to do the ad-lib plays that, well, Shedeur did it a little bit. Salter's on an entirely different level. And you have to play them differently, even though they don't have Travis. If they had Travis with this group, they'd be the nation at score. That's what I think. Because, like, one of the guys we'll talk about in a second, like, they got Xavier Hill. They got one of the best left tackles in college football coming back, etc. They're going to be able to run the ball a little bit, and Salter will do it as well, RPO. Yeah. But, like, if that receiver group is still just good, they're not – I mean, you're not going to be the same without Travis Hunter, but they should still be explosive. And in that red zone, this is the X factor. 3rd down and 4-yard line, it's 3rd and goal. We think they're going to pass. Yeah. But are they? Yeah. Quarterback draw, quarterback sprint, option play, all that stuff. It is a nightmare for a defense coordinator.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting, you talked about his big play with his leg ability, right? And a lot of this comes on broken plays where it's like everyone's covered up and he's just going to take off because all the defense's backs are to him. And this is year by year his longest rush: 38 yards, 43 yards, 52 yards, 41 yards. So you don't even have to be near the end zone, and this guy's a threat to totally flip the field. And I think that's something, in a weird way, Colorado is missing that, right? You don't have that with Shedeur Sanders, and you don't have that with, I guess, the lack of run game. And so Kaden Salter brings that to the table. I think he's probably going to be one of the more interesting quarterbacks in the country because he has Julian Lewis behind him. So we'll see how quickly fans are willing to turn on him. But I do think giving him the benefit of the doubt is probably the way to go. And one final question for you. If you're Pat Shurmur and you're going from calling plays for Shedeur and calling plays for Kaden Salter, what is the biggest change you're making?
You've got to make some design plays where he's on the edge to apply pressure to, depending on who the flat defender is. It depends on their coverage, sky, man, or whatever. Am I coming up to come after him, or am I going to hang back in coverage? When you put players in that spot, that's awkward. His arm strength, he can act like he's going to run towards the line of scrimmage. The guy charges, then he could throw a dart to a guy, and he's turned around. He's got some space. Again, Colorado's got guys that would make you miss ability. They can make a living on bootlegs and waggles and just design rollouts. It's really generic.
Does Colorado have the slipperiest offense in the Big 12? Are they too slippery to tackle?
I mean, they're going to play basketball on grass with him at quarterback, and that's totally cool.
Yeah,
it should work pretty well.
We will find out. We're going to talk about our favorite transfer portal additions with the guy himself who covers the portal. He covers every aspect of the transfer portal, NIL, and we're going to dive into who he likes the most from this Colorado class. But first, a quick break. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borber. Joining me, Brian Smith. He covers the transfer portal, and he does it extremely well. He does it perfectly, some might say, and I am part of that group. Brian, you've had some time to look at this Colorado class, right? It's a top 25 class in the country. They brought in a lot of big bodies on offensive line, on the defensive line. They brought in some skill guys. If you had to narrow it down to one on each side, who would you go with?
Well, I think Xavier Hill is the safe pick for offense, because when you add a future NFL player to your offensive line, I mean, in Colorado's, you said it best. What is it? 94 sacks over time? Come on, bro. That's just terrible. So you're getting an all-conference player from Memphis coming over. It's 300 plus pounds. Probably play guard, but he might play right tackle. He's got the ability to play different spots, so that's great. Defensively, they got a ton of guys. By the way, I love Sincere Brown too, the receiver. Having a big body guy that can make some guys miss is not going to go wrong. But whether it's Tion Parks or whether it's Terrence Love or whether it's one of the other guys on defense, they need a DB to step forward because they lost Travis. Whichever guy it is, I don't care if it's Noah King or whatever player it is. Yeah, they need a DB that the other team has to scheme against. Depends on how they want to use the system. So the defensive secondaries have gotten super complex because everybody runs something different. But they're going to have the ability, with all the guys they brought in, just go through fall camp and figure it out. But one of those DBs has got to be a guy where they can take away something. And on top of that, if it's a safety, somebody that can line up everybody when teams shift and then they motion, it gets everybody lined up. So they don't give up those garbage plays. They gave up too many of those last year in critical moments, and it killed them. They've got to be lined up correctly. And again, in coverage, they need a takeaway player because you're losing Travis. Yeah. And that's a tough pill to swallow, man.
Tough pill. And especially when you're sort of like next in the line was Colton Hood, and he's now suiting up in Rocky Top playing for the Tennessee Volunteers because, I mean, NAL speaks, right? And SEC speaks. And so Colorado loses two of its best corners. I'll start with my favorite offensive addition. You got to go Joseph Williams for me, the Tulsa wide receiver. It feels like we're repeating ourselves. You lose Travis and you lose your best receiver. And Joseph Williams is a guy who he's only played wide receiver for a year. This will be his second year. In high school, he was a quarterback. He played some safety. He was recruited to Tulsa as a safety. And then all of a sudden they were just like, hey, we kind of have too many safeties. Like, go play some wide receiver for us. He ended up being the conference freshman of the year and 6'2", 195, a great athlete. Saw it in the spring game where they throw a pass to the back pylon, jumps out of the out of the gym, even though it's not basketball, jumps out of the gym, brings it down. He was out of bounds, but it was still sort of a highlight of what he can do with his body. Super athletic, freak athlete there. So I'm going with Joseph Williams. I do think when you lose Travis Hunter and 2 other NFL wide receivers, you got a lot of talent to make up for. And I think he's a guy that can help at least reinvigorate that offensive unit. I think you got to moneyball the wide receivers by having multiple guys. And then defensively, for some reason, Jaheim Otis speaks to me. I had our host, Luke Robinson from Locked on Bama, come on, and he tells me if Jaheim Otis is motivated and ready to play and gets the most, like they get the most out of him, he's an All-American caliber player, right?
Yes.
And if they don't get that, then he's just kind of another 4 or 5 star flame out where we just go, what could have been? But when I hear he's an All-American potential guy, that's huge for Colorado, right? And I'd like you, he's from your neck of the woods kind of, so kind of shed some light on Otis and what you think his ceiling is if Colorado figures out how to get him activated.
I met him at the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game a few years ago, and I remember walking up to him thinking, I hope he doesn't put me between 2 slices of bread and eat me. He is massive. He was 360 plus at the time. Mm-hmm. He is a pure zero tech, 2-gap nose guard. You're not going to block him with one guy consistently. Nick Saban coveted him. What does that tell you? Like, he had offers from all the schools in the SEC, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, LSU, all that stuff. And he ended up at Bama, and he played, but for whatever reason, he decided to leave last year, and now he's at Colorado. He wasn't consistent at Bama, but he had some moments. So that's what they were talking about. Can they get the most out of him? I don't know. But this is kind of his chance now. Like, they don't have a body type like him there. At Bama, they got a couple. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to play him, barring him just being completely a slob and not going out there and working at all. Highly doubt he went all the way to Colorado to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think he'll do pretty well. And to be honest, no offense to the Big 12, they don't have offensive lines like they do in the SEC. He should be pretty dominant when he wants to be. If that happens, that again, it goes back to those little things. Red zone, hold a team to a field goal instead of them punch it in, stuff like that. That's about talent, man, more than anything else. And Colorado didn't have a guy like that last year. They didn't have a 350-plus pound nose guard. There's 2 or 3 of those guys in college football. So Buffs might be trending a little bit better on defense too, and that's something they definitely need.
Yeah, I sort of been saying this as soon as I learned where it's just kind of like a mental thing for him, where it's like he just needs to be unlocked, right? It's like if Warren Sapp, who, I mean, one of the best to ever do it. Deion Sanders obviously didn't play this position, but still one of the best to ever do it. They have so many, I mean, Marshall Faulk, running back, gold jacket, right? They have so many gold jackets in Colorado where it's like, if you're not able to like put it together, just like effort or attitude wise with those guys supporting you, and you couldn't do it at Bama with Nick Saban coaching you, maybe it's not meant to happen. But at the same time, you hear all the potential, you hear all the what he could be, what he should be. And I think that's enough to get you excited if you're a Colorado fan. So I think you have to look at him. And then one final guy who I think we're both going to be hearing his name a lot this year is Tafiq Bayard, USF safety, just balled out in the spring game. He could rush the passer. He could cover. He could do everything. And Colorado lost both starting safeties. They lost Shiloh. They lost Cameron Swim Craig. And I think he's an upgrade over both of them. And it's not very often where you lose 2, I would guess you say they're all conference caliber guys, and you go, we're better off now that we have this guy. And so I think he could be all Big 12 caliber safety. So he's someone who I think everyone should look out for. Brian, I appreciate you hopping on. Tell the people where they can find you, because you got the portal covered. You got the Seminoles covered. You're busy. You're a busy fella.
Locked on the portal is my new show, recruiting NIL and the transfer portal every day. Right now it's more recruiting with all the visits getting ready to start, Colorado and everybody else. So I'm previewing all that, previewing players, top prospect lists and everything. And I also do Florida State football, which is a chore for many other reasons, because they were terrible last year, but they have to get better. I mean, I've lit into them. I'm not afraid to say what I think about the administration, et cetera, or the ACC. That's another story. But find me on all the same places you find Locked on Buffs, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and everywhere you get your pods.
Thank you, Brian, for hopping on. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Kevin Borba, host of Locked on Buffs. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Give us 5 stars. Let us keep our jobs. We're having fun. We're covering college football, and you don't want to miss it. I'll see you guys tomorrow.